It's a Saturday afternoon. He's standing in a long checkout line holding a few things he didn't plan to buy. A coffee machine, some upgraded headphones, a few smaller items that somehow added up faster than expected. He glances at the total on the screen ahead. Not his total, someone else's. $287. He shifts slightly. When it's his turn, the cashier scans everything quickly. The number climbs: $42, $89, $137, $214. There's a pause. For a second, he considers putting something back, but he doesn't. He taps his card. Approved. And that's it. No real emotion, no excitement, no panic either. Just a quiet thought on the way out. I make decent money now, so why does this still feel tight? That question lingers, because this isn't the first time, and it won't be the last. At first, everything about this situation seems normal, but something about it quietly repeats itself at every income level. And this is where it gets interesting. A few years earlier, things looked very different. Same person, different numbers. Back then, he was earning close to minimum wage, around $2,000 a month. Rent took half of it, utilities, food, transport, most of the rest. There wasn't much left. Every purchase felt deliberate, measured. Eating out was a decision, not a habit. Then things improved. A better job, $4,500 a month, more breathing room. He moved to a slightly nicer apartment, started going out more often. Subscriptions appeared. Music, streaming, a fitness app. Nothing extreme, just upgrades. Later, another jump. Now it's around $8,000 a month. The apartment gets better again. Travel becomes more frequent. Convenience becomes normal. Food delivery replaces groceries some days. Ubers replace public transport. Time feels more valuable now. And now, today, he's making close to 6 figures annually. On paper, this is success, but the structure of his life, it quietly expanded alongside his income. Rent increased, monthly spending increased, expectations increased. And here's the part most people don't notice. The feeling didn't change as much as expected. At every stage, something subtle was happening. Not suddenly, gradually. When income was low, spending was limited by necessity. There wasn't much choice. But as income grew, constraints disappeared, and something replaced them. Lifestyle. Not consciously, just naturally. A better place feels reasonable. More comfort feels deserved. Convenience feels efficient. And over time, these small adjustments become the new baseline. This seems fine at first, but something changes, because the gap between income and expenses doesn't expand the way people expect. It often stays surprisingly similar. At $2,000 a month, maybe there was $100 left. At $8,000 a month, maybe there's $300 left. Different numbers, same feeling. And most people don't notice this part. They assume higher income will solve the pressure, but the system quietly adjusts around them, without any clear moment where it feels like a mistake. Just small, reasonable decisions repeated over time. Let's slow this down. Not with complicated formulas, just simple numbers. At $2,000 a month, expenses might be $1,900. That leaves $100. Over a year, that's $1,200. Now fast forward. At $8,000, expenses might rise to $7,700. Now the leftover is $300. Sounds better, but over a year, that's $3,600. Yes, it's more, but not dramatically more compared to the income increase. And this is where it gets interesting, because the jump in income was 4x, but the increase in financial margin only 3x, and in many real cases, even less. Now extend this further. At $20,000 a month, it's not unusual for expenses to reach $18,500 or more, leaving $1,500. Again, higher numbers, but still a relatively narrow gap. And here's the hidden pattern. Income grows in steps, but lifestyle grows continuously, quietly filling the space. So why does this happen? Not because people are careless, not because they're irresponsible, but because of something much more subtle. expectations. At lower incomes, expectations are limited by reality. But as income increases, so does the environment. Friends upgrade their lifestyles. Colleagues spend differently. Social circles shift. And without realizing it, the definition of normal changes. A $15 meal becomes a $40 dinner. A basic apartment becomes a modern one in a better area. A simple vacation becomes an international trip. None of these feel excessive. They feel appropriate. And that's the key, because no single decision feels like overspending. It just feels like keeping up with a new version of life. There's also convenience. Higher income often comes with less time, so people trade money for time. Food delivery, faster transport, services that remove friction. Individually, they make sense, but together, they reshape the financial structure, without any clear signal that something has shifted. Now fast forward a bit, not dramatically, just a few years. From the outside, everything still looks fine. Stable income, comfortable lifestyle. But under the surface, something else is forming. Dependence. Not on debt necessarily, but on maintaining the current income level, because the cost of living is now tied to it. If income drops even slightly, the entire structure feels tight again. Not because of poor decisions, but because the margin was never wide to begin with. And this is where things quietly change. Freedom becomes limited. Options become narrower. Time becomes more tied to maintaining income. At every level, minimum wage to high income, this pattern can exist, just scaled differently. More income doesn't automatically create flexibility, unless something else changes alongside it. Now, there's another way to look at this, not as a problem, but as a pattern. Because some people experience income growth differently. They don't necessarily avoid lifestyle upgrades, but they notice the gap, the space between earning and spending. And instead of letting it close naturally, they let it widen, slowly, deliberately, not dramatically, just enough to create margin. Because over time, that margin becomes something else. Not just savings, but flexibility. The ability to say no. The ability to pause. The ability to change direction without immediate pressure. And this isn't about extreme frugality or avoiding enjoyment. It's about awareness. Understanding that income alone doesn't define financial stability. Its structure around it does. And this is where the perspective shifts, not in how much is earned, but in how much space is allowed to exist around it. Later that evening, he's back home. The coffee machine is already set up on the counter. The headphones are still in the box. Everything he bought earlier feels normal now, expected even. But that question from earlier hasn't disappeared. It's quieter now, more subtle. Why does this still feel tight? And maybe the answer isn't in the number on the paycheck, but in everything that slowly grew around it. Because from minimum wage to six figures, even up to $1 million a year, the pattern doesn't disappear. It just changes scale. And once you start seeing it, you notice it everywhere. Not as something dramatic, just as something consistent. This is not financial advice, just an observation, one that most people live through without ever really naming. And maybe that's why it feels confusing, because nothing looks wrong, but something never quite feels resolved. If this helped clarify things, consider subscribing. There's more to explore.